Welcome to the Fabric Spotlight, a series of talks we hold with entrepreneurs and leaders in the cloud and IoT infrastructure space. Today, it gives me great pleasure to have a chat with Navin Chaddha, the Managing Director of Mayfield Fund. Congratulations, Navin, on the 50th anniversary of Mayfield.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks for all the work we've been doing with you over the years.
Absolutely. I've known Navin for a very, very long time, and I've always found it very interesting to speak with you, especially given your track record not only as an investor but also as an entrepreneur. So I'd like to understand what your journey was before you got to Mayfield and how has it been since then?
Yeah, so I think you and I have known each other for a while, and I've known Prabhakar for even longer through the NetScaler days. So as you can tell, right, like I grew up in India, had the standard IIT track, was lucky to come to Stanford. Then based on my grad school work at Stanford, started my first company in '96. It was called VXstream.
I remember that very well, actually.
Yeah, which delivered video on the internet. We started with Stanford classes, but then it became mainstream, got acquired by Microsoft to become Windows Media, became one of the youngest execs there. Once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur, then went on to do my second company, iBeam Broadcasting, which was a video CDN that went public and was acquired, and then did a third company, which was a SaaS infrastructure company. Before SaaS was SaaS, in 2000, 2001, it was called ASP, the application service provider. And I joined the venture business after those three startups in 2004. So I have been doing it for 15 years, have been extremely lucky to partner with some great entrepreneurs like you and Prabhakar along the way.
You know, Mayfield has turned 50, as we mentioned earlier. Why do you think Mayfield has succeeded this long through series of successors? And what is also its thought in the cloud and IoT space?
Yeah, absolutely, right? So I think, as you mentioned, right, like Mayfield, we have a long-standing history in Silicon Valley. I represent the fourth generation of leadership. It's really a build-to-last firm. We have had the great pleasure of partnering with over 500 entrepreneurs over our 50 years, 116 of which have gone on to have IPOs, and another 200 have been acquired. I think Mayfield, if you look at our branding and whole philosophy, it's around people. We are a people-first firm where we bet on the jockey, not the racetrack. Our belief is if you bet on A-plus people, it doesn't matter what their initial idea is. Working with them and rolling up our sleeves, and essentially we'll find the right market opportunity. So our job is, how do we work with entrepreneurs who want to change the way people work, live, and play? And how do we give them the safety net, the support, and help, whether it's strategy, business development, talent hiring. We have a huge team on those areas along with the investment team who helps on those fronts. And we have a set of core beliefs. We believe we are running a marathon where we are more in the support role to the entrepreneurs, providing them the water, the cloth when they sweat along the way. But really, it's all about the entrepreneurs, right, basically. And we have to make sure they're working on interesting problems that can change the world. As far as the infrastructure space is concerned, I think we have seen the evolution over the past 5 decades where there was a lot of innovation in the first wave in Silicon. That's where basically the whole PC and the client server era started, and that's why we are called the Silicon Valley. Then the value moved up on the software side, which was the whole client server era, as I mentioned earlier. Then the internet happened. There was a lot of innovation in networking at that time. Right, whether it was Juniper, Cisco, and the optical networking companies grew. And then mobile happened, and today we are in the cloud era, and some people call, now we're in the post-cloud era. Yep. So if you look at in the infrastructure space, right, like there's a lot of exciting stuff which entrepreneurs are working on both the cloud native and multi-cloud space, but also as the cloud moves to the edge. And there are very interesting problems to be solved in that area. And again, in those areas, we've been very lucky to have participated with entrepreneurs, the founders of Hoshi Corp, right, at Series A. They're a dominant company in the multi-cloud automation and security space as it relates to multi-cloud. They even own Console Project, which is the service mesh and service discovery. And it goes on, whether it's the data layer, but I'm sure like we'll chat more about it. And it's very similar to the thesis you guys have in this particular area.
That's wonderful. You mentioned Hoshi Corp. What are the other companies that have been in your portfolio that have achieved critical mass or critical successes? I'd like you to talk a little bit about them and what attracted you to them, or anything that you can say about them.
So I think it's always has been people for us, and are they solving a problem which is a painkiller for their particular audience, and is that market big enough? But it always comes down to people first. As I mentioned, Hoshi Corp, let me just drill down a little bit into it and all the layers in the cloud space where we have had success. So first of all, right, like when the cloud happened, your disks, network, and compute are going to be controlled by the big guys. So you have to move up the stack, if you will. So there's innovation at the next layer, whether it's the data layer. So we have some good companies there, Couchbase, Influx Data, which is in the time series space, and MapR in the whole basically big data space. The next layer is middleware and tooling. There we have funded a bunch of companies which are either doing the orchestration layer, they're solving the data portability issue like Portworx and making it container specific, if you will. And then we have a lot of apps companies which probably you guys aren't looking at. We were investors in Marketo, Mort, ServiceMax, which all had unicorn exits, but then we are in companies like Crunchbase and Outreach. And besides Hoshi just doing cloud automation, I'm pretty sure you know they have a product called Vault, which is in the security space for key management and encryption. They have a networking product in this new world of cloud natives where it's serverless and services oriented. The whole service discovery is a big deal. So we have taken a view of investing up and down the stack. We have actually even funded a chip company 3 to 4 years back with somebody you know well, Pradeep Sindhu, the ex-founder, vice chairman, and CTO. And he's providing infrastructure to hyperscale providers, both in a chip and systems form, which is not competing with the CPU. It's an offload system where you take the networking functions, security functions, storage functions, streaming functions, and do it on an offload processor or an offload system. So we are going long. It's hard to compete with the cloud providers, so fund things which are gaps in their ecosystem. So that's the approach we have been taking, and our view is there's innovation everywhere, up and down the stack.
You know, being an old silicon hand myself, I'm glad to see it coming back over here. So in the infrastructure space, you mentioned that you funded Pradeep's company. Pradeep was the inspiration for us to get Velo Cloud going in as part of the fabric. I'm curious, what infrastructure, what IoT or hybrid, what is driving, even in the silicon area, as much as the fabric is focused everything on software infrastructure, I'm just curious, where do you see things going even in the silicon space?
Yeah, so I think first of all, to your question on the multi-cloud and the cloud space, in our mind, this is what cloud did to the infrastructure space. In the past, when you and I were entrepreneurs or we were running companies or funding companies, the infrastructure was static and consolidated. Now the infrastructure is dynamic and it's distributed. So you can take resources from on-prem, you can take resources from public cloud A, public cloud B, public cloud C, and stitch it to look like it's running in one place. So the whole stack essentially is being disrupted. And the reason silicon is becoming an area of focus for companies is when you go to hyperscale, you can't run everything in software on a CPU. CPU is good at certain things. So to go displace the x86, that's a mistake, I think. But if you look at functions like GPU, AI ML, you look at vector processing, and you look at offload processors, it's fair game. And that's why NVIDIA is a good example, which is GPU, AI ML. They bought a networking company, Mellanox, for $6.9 billion. So there is this movement that the Intel processor or AMD or x86 or ARM is not enough. And that's why NVIDIA is what it is. That's why Mellanox is what it is. Cavium was a $6 billion acquisition. And there's enough money in the ecosystem now. After 20 years, you and I joke about, to go fund things which make Silicon Valley Silicon Valley.
Absolutely, absolutely. And associated with that is all the elements of security, cloud security, which
Absolutely.
has become a big topic. What is your take on where the state of affairs is on cloud security? What do you see as white space opportunities there?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of problems which are being created because of clouds and multi-clouds. So first of all, right, like if we look at 80s, 90s, 2000s, the enterprises were within boundaries. They were within perimeter. So all your security infrastructure was built to protect the bad guys entering your space, whether it's your corporate network, whether it's your branch network, it's your data center. But on the cloud, especially with the SaaS model and infrastructure coming as a service, 10 years back, I could name 3 or 5 SaaS apps which were being used. Today, the number people are reporting is 700. Somebody says 900. Somebody says 1900. And the main reason is because of BYOA. People are bringing their own applications for productivity, but also line of businesses are using software on the cloud. So essentially, when you move from a boundaried organization to a boundaryless organization, what are the challenges? So first of all, do I even know which SaaS apps are being used? So there are companies, we were investors in Elastica, and that whole category of CASB either has gotten consolidated or some companies are breaking out. There's need for a security cloud, what Zscaler has done. They have moved boxes from on-prem to their cloud as a service. So if apps can be a service, if compute can be a service, storage can be a service, why not security? Data is a huge issue. Now data is not sitting on-prem. So are your keys going to be with cloud providers? Do you need to encrypt the data at rest and motion? That's what the Hoshi Corp Vault product does. How do you build a firewall when your services are distributed? How do you build a load balancer, right? So these are some of the white spaces we are looking at. And then with compliance with GDPR and the new California regulation that is coming up, it's creating a huge opportunity for startups to go innovate. But it's not that the incumbents are going to sit idle. For that reason, F5 made a huge acquisition on Nginx, right?
Yes.
And that's what is going to happen with this whole cloud era. Security is a huge issue.
That's wonderful. You talked about compliance and GDPR and data privacy. I've got a few companies I want to talk to you about later. In terms of what you know about the fabric, we collaborate closely with entrepreneurs in the IoT and cloud infrastructure space. Looking at it from outside, do you have a few words about the fabric's approach to the space, and where do you see us in the value chain as you look at this whole industry, investment industry?
So I think first of all, right, like we're biased, right? Like we love people and we love the founders of Fabric. That's why we backed you at Ankina, both Prabhakar and you, and we believe in what you're doing, and we think there's white space to get involved even before VCs are there, because you're taking on technical risk, you're taking on people risk. So this roll up the sleeves idea where you're sort of co-creating these companies is a white space, and you guys have built companies, so you guys know what it takes. And compared to some of the other accelerators and incubators, you are able to complete teams, right? Whether it was Velo Cloud or other things, it's just not a product. So what I like is from day one, you are trying to create companies and build companies rather than build products. So you're not interested, so you're very aligned with the VC. We make a lot of money for our limited partners when we are funding entrepreneurs or partnering with them who are going to build companies beyond just building products. And I love the approach you guys are taking there.
Thank you. And as with the projects we are working on, we are looking heavily, more and more, as you know, we have IODM in the IoT space.
They're doing well.
Yes.
Ron is a good guy.
Thank you. I think Ron is going to buy you a glass of beer.
He always does that.
We are looking at blockchain, we are looking at edge compute, and we are looking at IoT. We are working very actively. What do you see as white space opportunities in those areas?
I think it's still an early innings as far as edge and IoT is concerned. There's a lot of noise, but I don't know if people have figured out what are the real painkillers, if you will. So if we look at, right, like the thesis that, hey, there used to be 100 million PCs, a billion mobile devices, you're talking about 100 billion devices which are going to be connected to the internet. And then with the advent of 5G, you're going to have data which is going to be available everywhere at high speeds. So if I look at that, it tells me the processing has to move to the edge. And if I look at where have been platform shifts, the world used to be mainframe, centralized. With the PC, it got distributed, the client-server era. With the web, it again got consolidated. With mobile, it got distributed. Some runs on the cloud, some runs on your local basically phones and mobile devices. But then the cloud happened. Again, everything has been centralized from back-end processing. I think the era we are entering is this centralized processing is going to get decentralized, and it'll be a hybrid model where some of the computing functions will run on the edge nodes. For example, in autonomous, right? They're collecting so much data. There'll be so much latency to upload that data up to the cloud and then process. By that time, the car might hit somebody. So you need to have local processing. Similarly, at point of sale, if there's fraud happening, can I process something locally? So we are big believers in this stuff. And similarly in blockchain, we are looking at the whole stack, starting all the way from silicon to all the dApps that can be built. And where is their white space? Is the white space at the infrastructure layer? Is the white space at the data layer? Is the white space at the middleware and tooling area? Or is it at the dApps, if you will, the decentralized apps? And I think blockchain had the hype with Bitcoin going all the way. And I look at more the opportunity, not in the crypto and coin space. I look at it more in the decentralized and distributed computing era in the future. And that's what is very exciting over the next 10 years.
That's nice. And we have also seen 5G coming along here. While Edge and 5G are not synonymous, you could have 5G have applicability beyond the edge. How do you see 5G changing the nature of the edge compute? Or in general, how do you see 5G impacting the application space?
So I think what it's going to do is, first of all, it's not there. We're going to get there. And the end devices, the mobile devices, are very, very fast and very, very capable. If you will, the latest reports are some of the iPhone processors are even faster than what exists on my PC. So the amount of compute and processing you can do on these mobile devices is going through the roof. So the way I look at it is with 5G, you'll have more bandwidth, you'll have faster, basically data connections, lower latency. So can we have a new set of applications which can be built now, which are low latency, real time, and will they enable innovation in the whole stack, if you will? And I think we're in the early innings there. I don't think us or anybody has figured out where is the right inflection point to go create companies or fund companies. I think it's in the discovery mode, if you will. But it's an enabler which is going to enable many things to happen, if you will. And I don't know what your perspective there is. I think it's early. And it's great.
Yes.
Like for VCs, it's great for people like you.
Absolutely. Now, we do see a lot of companies exploring the 5G area. What we have not yet discerned is what are the killer apps. We have hypotheses and theses, and we are still looking at the space. But I would like to actually flip the question back and continue the conversation. Have you seen any interesting companies evolve both in the edge and the 5G area, and which has, let's say, caught your attention? Or at least, if you cannot talk about specific names, what type of applications or what type of elements are they driving?
Yeah, so I think one area, one of our companies, which is at the mid stages, has very high growth, is a time series database. And it's metrics oriented, which allows you to run and build lightweight applications on the edge and in the IoT area. So think of them like you have Couchbase, like you have MongoDB. So for time series and metrics in IoT, they are creating a white space. Similarly, right, like some of these nodes might have spare capacity. Can you run compute at them? Can you run storage at them? So we have two stealth mode companies which are trying to solve those problems, but they're software companies. They don't need to go build the edge nodes. They're available and they have spare capacity, if you will. And we are looking at the whole edge computing area, and I think there are opportunities. First of all, just providing the bandwidth is an issue. Making it secure is an issue. How do I take my existing framework and make it seamlessly run on the edge? So we have a few initiatives in there, but again, they're driven by the entrepreneurs. Like, we are not creating companies or co-creating them like what you guys do. So I think it's interesting times, early, but a lot of problems need to get solved. And I would encourage, whether it's people you're working with or in general people watching this stuff, to go look at that area deeply.
Sounds great. You know, you and I have been through a long journey through being entrepreneurs and also observing other very smart entrepreneurs build both successful companies, more so for me than for you. I've had my share of failures too, as well as a share of successes. Do you have any parting advice, both on the success side and how do you handle failures or how do you learn from them? Any parting advice for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first of all, right, like I would say go for it, because if you get an opportunity to change the world, don't stop, jump in. So I always tell entrepreneurs, start with the big idea. Second, go surround yourself with excellence, whether it's your co-founders, whether it's your mentors, whether it's your investors. Make sure you have the chemistry fit with them, but they are just excellent and can complement you. The third thing I see people making a mistake is they don't codify their mission and values. They get so focused in Silicon Valley on just building the product and the technology, they don't step back and say like, hey, can I articulate in one line, what's the mission? Why do I need to exist? What are the values of my company, right? And the build to last companies have essentially those things. The other things I've seen is companies which are becoming big, either in our portfolio, your portfolio, in other VCs' portfolio, they're thinking beyond tech innovation. They're thinking about business model innovation. They're thinking about distribution innovation. For example, that's what the open source movement allows you to do. You get top of the funnel, you get to practitioners, and then you have to go monetize. Or change the delivery paradigm, right? With the open source movement, can you become as a service company? Not a services company, but like what SaaS companies did at the application layer. So think beyond basically those things. And then I would say, remember, right, like company building is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So if you get in, just be patient, have grit and have perseverance. And where I've seen companies not make it, it's okay to fail because of market reasons. The markets didn't happen, but don't fail because you couldn't execute. And some of the pitfalls I see with companies, the first and foremost is they just can't focus. And I have this saying that startups die of indigestion, not starvation. So if you're going to essentially do a company, be the king or queen of some hill. Don't try to become a jack of all trades, if you will. The second thing they do is they're so basically enthusiastic about their own idea, they forget for the customer is their product, solution, or service a must-have, what I call a painkiller, or is it really a vitamin? So I think those are some of the things where companies make mistakes. They try to do too much. Rather than building trenches and going miles deep, they are essentially focused on going inches deep, not in one area, in many, many areas. So if they can focus, they can make sure they're selling painkillers and not vitamins. The rest is execution.
That's wonderful. Navin, thank you very much. It has been wonderful talking to you. And actually, you gave me some wonderful perspectives, which I could take away from also in this process.
No, it's a real pleasure. It's always been a pleasure working with you guys. We learn together. And thanks for your kind words and having me here.
Thanks very much, Navin. And thank you all for watching. And please wait for another episode of our Spotlight series.